start off with a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the larger group. Tell us a little bit. You came in from the banking industry and from manufacturing and sales and marketing side of the world, and you came in completely flat-footed on the conservation side. You didn't really know the industry at all and didn't know what we did. How did you get yourself up to speed? What was the method? How did you learn about conservation work? Because you're quite capable at speaking about it at this point.
Yes, thanks, Charles. It's quite difficult to understand what we do because actually there is no measurement system in place, to monitor the programs on regular basis. And the first thing that we did was create the system of monitoring, create the system of accountabilities, really going deep with everybody, on what they're trying to achieve. Through that, I think it also provides more. I don't have to keep on asking questions now.
Yeah.
It's just really now for me to motivate and keep the excitement going with the team. And because all the information is now available in our fingertips.
So the measures piece, is that something that kind of came from your background as a business person, and that focus on that? Is that?
Yes, indeed, Charles. I was in a bank, so banking is all about measurements. They measure you, in fact, on a daily basis, So it's really something that is really, to me, I think it's a system to create more focus, accountabilities, and once that is available, everybody else knows what everybody else is doing. So it also creates transparencies in the system. Everybody knows who's achieving, who's not, and how they can help to make sure that everybody is achieving the targets.
Mark Tursek was here last week in Hong Kong and then in China, and he had a fun, I think it was actually in Hong Kong here that he mentioned this, is that we all have a duty to kind of ask two questions. One is, how can I help? Whatever project is coming along, and then you also have the duty to go out and ask around the organization, how can you help me? And I think you've done a really nice job of that across the organization. One of the other things I noticed you do really well is managing up. So you did a very nice job of managing me and others in the organization that are at a different different level or in the other and sideways into the organization. What's your advice to your staff on that front? Are they managing you up pretty well?
Yeah. In some cases, yes, but I would like to see more of that, because I think this next year and the next 2 years, I would say, when we start charting the course, we're really identifying all the activities, prioritizing them, and how it contributes, rolled up to our big goals. Now I think they would see a much more clearer pictures on how they can pull resources from the regions, the world office, and so forth. Now we are building that, and I think with the system that we have now, they would see more sideways and upwards, because they are more able to have time to think more strategically and to see beyond 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years down the road.
So those clear, transparent measurements, you're saying, basically enable people to get out of their silos and move across the organization, bringing the resources both within Indonesia and then also across the country.
I think that's one. I think the second one is also you are not bogged into trying to find out what you are trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, where we are, and so forth. It's less conflicts, less issues, and now you're able to have more free time thinking more strategically going forward.
So on the, you talked a little bit, the historic work of the Nature Conservancy in Indonesia has been around the forests and the marine sector, and a lot mostly on either forest carbon or on marine protected areas. And those are clearly strong programs going forward. And you talked a little bit about the fisheries and the palm, pulp and paper, the work in Loiser ecosystem. What's your threshold for taking on new things? You also mentioned disaster risk reduction, climate issues, urban issues.
Yeah.
When do you know you can go and grab something new and try to craft a major project around it? And which one of those do you think is the most exciting at the moment?
Yes, I think it comes back first on what is the strategic interest of Indonesia. You know, the country is developing, its economy is developing like 5.5% annually. And the strategic industries is about mining, it's about palm oil, it's about pulp and paper. At the same time, there are big issues threatening the environment on deforestation because of these industries. You know. So this is the battle that we must go in if we want to ensure big conservation gain, big impact. You know. We don't have all the capacity to do it, you know, but as I said, we're not going to be jumping and immediately doing the things, you know, from A to Z. Because there's going to be a stepwise process in doing them. And we are very careful in moving to new geographies, you know, and partnering with various big corporations. There are big issues and challenges as well now. So we're doing this in a really strategic way, stepwise process. And in the next 6 months, it is very crucial in really pinpointing what are the capacity needed, and we must really build those capacity immediately.
Talk a little bit. You've done a lot of work to position Indonesia as central to the global vision, global challenges, global strategies vision of the Nature Conservancy. You've done a lot of outreach and discussion, and your staff has been really good to integrate with the forest folks and the fisheries and the marine teams. Tell us a little bit about why Indonesia. Why is Indonesia so central to that vision, that global vision for the next 5 years?
Yeah. So I think from the forest side, you know, Indonesia is the third largest tropical forest after Brazil and Congo. You know, third largest in the world, which makes you very important.
Yeah.
Indonesia is the second largest fish producer in the world after China. We have, like, our marine biodiversity is number one in the world. You know. So as the country moves on very aggressive economic development plan, of course there are threats on current resources. So this makes us internationally important. We have actually, you know, we should be taking a leadership position with all these biodiversities in place. You know, this is something that I and the team, even Pawahyudi and the rest of the leadership team, really trying to push our governments, trying to influence them to take leadership positions. You know, because of this biodiversity. If we do that, we are able to negotiate better internationally. So we are helping the governments, giving them you know, policy briefs, giving them data on what we have done to be able for them to take this leadership position.
So taking leadership on conservation at the government level, like for instance, like the former president, SBY, did on the Coral Triangle, is something you're trying to replicate and continue to push with the new government?
Yes, we do. We are very close now. Even our board members, one of the board members, Pasarono and Pawahyudi, is in this selection panel for the Echelon 1 for the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So they have a lot to say who's going to be recruited as the Director Generals in these ministries. And Pasarono is also an advisor to the Minister of Marine and Fisheries. And we are very much engaged with them and trying to, you know, to inform them on what are the things that we must do to take this leadership position.
And tell us a little bit too about some of the challenges. You've talked about some of the internal challenges, trying to get aligned, focused on results and measurability. You've got a new government. What are the challenges of conservation? What do you have to overcome in Indonesia that
Yes.
are unique or particularly interesting for you?
There are a few things. I would say number one is the capacity. There's still a lot of capacity lacking across the country. For local NGOs, even for government officials, when they talk something about conservation, which many of them really not aware or understand what is the meaning behind it. Number two is about enforcement, monitoring and enforcement. It's such a big country, it's really spread out, and most of our work is in remote places. There are lack of capacity to do monitoring and enforcement. You have a lot of regulation. Even we think that the country is over-regulated. There's too much regulations, but it's just lack of capacity, understanding to enforce what has been regulated. This is the challenge, and most of the time we have to involve communities, build that capacity to help the monitoring part.
So that's a major challenge, that enforcement
Exactly.
piece of it. Anything on the technological side that you see on the horizon that can help on that front?
Well,
So for instance, Brazil
yes.
has a forest code which wasn't enforced for many, many years, and then they, through the use of technology, remote sensing, they've been able to support local state governments to enforce the forest code. And it's been pretty effective. The forest code requires really that in Brazil that you maintain a certain amount of
Yeah.
forest. Is that a possibility in Indonesia too?
I think definitely yes. From what I know, the Minister of Marine and Fisheries has been looking into that. How do you manage? As I said, Indonesia is 75% waters, and there's a lot of illegal fishing coming to Indonesia. And she's taking a very tough stand on this. And she is looking at how to be able to monitor all the vessels coming into Indonesia and so forth. But again, the capacity of the people, the staffs within the ministries is really need to. That's first and foremost. You need to build that before you really, provide any kind of system.
Right. So forests, the trees are a little easier to pin down than fish.
Exactly.
They don't move around so
They don't
much.
move around, yeah.
Well, let's go to the folks on the phone and see if you all have any questions. I've had my chance to talk to Rizal. Anyone on the phone have any questions they'd like to raise? Can you unmute everyone? Everyone's unmuted. And,
They can unmute themselves.
okay, unmute yourselves.
I have a question.
Yeah, so we have Christina Tanzo is in the office here, and she's got a question.
So Rizal, I was really interested in hearing about the palm oil, given that I do have a few donors who are based in Singapore, and they're always interested in learning a bit more. And I don't even know where to start to tell them about what work is being done in Indonesia regarding the palm oil industry. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay. So, Indonesia is the largest palm oil producer, and there's a little over 10 million hectares of palm oil is being planted. That's the big companies, the plasma within the companies, as well as independent smallholders. And there's a lot of pressure internationally for palm oil, as you know, because of the impact to deforestation. The key question is that the independent smallholders now, they occupy about 45 to 48% of land for palm oil, which is about almost 5 million hectares of land. This independent smallholders is the one that owns 1 hectare, 2 hectares, or 3 hectares of land. And their yield productivity is very low, about 2 to 3 tons per hectare, whereas the standard industry is 7 to 8 tons per hectare. So the way they want to increase their revenue is encroachment to national park forest, doing more deforestation. So this is where it needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
How do you improve the yield of this company, of the smallholders? The only way you can do that is to do replanting and integrate them with the big growers. That's one of the plans that we are going to be doing in the future, really identifying, demonstrating a program with one of the big growers on how they're able to help the independent small growers to replant, improve the yield, and at the same time stopping deforestation. So, without looking at it in a holistic ways, there's still going to be a lot of pressure internally as well as internationally against our palm oil industries.
So in terms of funding, if a donor wants to invest in the palm oil program in Indonesia, what would they be investing in specifically?
Building the capacity of the independent smallholders, because once you do the replanting, it takes 4 years to be able to get revenue. Now within that 4 years, what can you do? Making sure they have a very good management system, that they can have alternative livelihood within that 4 years and so forth. So those are the things, as well as building the capacity of the local NGOs who can help us monitor and keep enforcement within this 4-year period.
That was one of the things in talking with Mark last week that he's very interested in, is that's the sort of the weak link in the chain, is that conversion of smallholders to a more sustainable palm oil. And it's that 4-year period that's really the tricky part. Financing that 4-year gap is the problem.
Yes.
Do you see I mean, you come from the banking world, and so does Mark, so maybe you guys think about this the same way. Do you think that there's a way that TNC can play a role in that, financing that gap?
I think so. If funding coming from international, for example, our impact capital, impact investing, interest rate is very low. If you even convert that to our local currencies, hedge it against the US dollars, you still have about 3% of interest gap between the local interest and international interest rate. And using the impact capital model, where we need to really also engage the governments to take part in this investment, because they need to provide some kind of regulation to make sure that the program is sustainable. They would provide some sort of incentives for the independent smallholders to make sure that 4-year period they're able to have alternative livelihoods. So it's not something that 4 years replanting, you don't get any kind of income. No, there's going to be government subsidies within that 4-year period. And in turn, the companies that is willing to take part in this initiative, they'll be the one who's going to be the first loss guarantee, meaning that any of the independent smallholders who is not paying back the investment, the company will be responsible to absorb that loss.
Yeah. So, other questions on the line, or do we have anything in the room on the line?
We've been doing a lot of thought leadership now for mining industries and extractive industries. how serious are these industry players in reversing the trend, and how aggressive are they in their planning to actually have something on the ground?
I think the industries is now at a point of no return, meaning that it's going to be impacting their business sustainability if they don't change. So they have a plan to change. They're actually already doing it now. But again, the number one, it's the capacity. Number two is monitoring and enforcement. It needs to be in place. So a lot of the international NGOs are now working with the big companies, trying to help them create this management plan to make sure that they are reversing their action now. So I think we need to be in that. We need to be. I mean, we've been invited, we've been called upon. This big companies is calling us, and they see that TNC can play a strategic role, strategic partners with them, leading the initiatives, even leading the management among other NGOs. I think that's the positioning that we have built in the last 1 year. The scary situation now is we don't have yet the capacity to do that. So we are building up the capacity, and many of the industry players, the big industry players, is calling us, please help us. We see TNC as a strategic partners. You have the expertise in the country, regionally as well as globally, to help us doing that.
So really, I mean, there's one of the challenges is this capacity. It's a capacity of local farmers. It's a capacity of the provincial officials, the ministry officials, the NGO community, the corporates. All of them are sort of lacking the capacity to make sure that supply chain is a sustainable supply chain. So our role really is to help all along that supply chain and also build our own capacity at the same time.
Exactly, that's true.
What do you see us doing in the field with the communities and farmers? We've got good connections with the corporates, and they are excited about our help. How do you actually engage in a large landscape? All of the different players and stakeholders. What does building capacity look like on the ground?
Engaging communities, as I said, they really help us to make sure that the landscape or the seascape that we are trying to manage sustainably is effective. They are front and center, they are on the grounds. It's in their own interest to be able to do that. And one of our strengths in our both terrestrial and marine programs is actually community engagement, building up those community capacities, training them to be able to manage their land sustainably, not taking so much, but really having sustainable practices on the ground. Now the next step on that is to build community enterprises to make sure that their livelihood is increased and they're able to really expand their monitoring and helping us to monitor this huge landscape. It's not just one community, there are various communities that's going to be involved, but really identifying, I think the key challenge is really identifying what best works locally, because from each project sites to a different project sites, it's really a different community enterprise, products or systems that needs to be in place. Identifying those and facilitating for them to be able to manage their own resources sustainably is critical.
Right. And this gets back to your point about market-driven.
Yes.
Because you're talking really about pulp and paper and palm and fish, and essentially all of these commodities have an income stream that can ultimately pay for that kind of sustainability. That's our theory, I guess.
Yes, exactly. True.
Other questions from the room or the Indonesia team? You guys can throw some throw some rocks at your boss if you want. Or others on the phone, anybody want to raise a hand? Or I've got a couple more questions. Rizal and I are friends on Facebook, and so he gets my annoying posts, and I get his very nice posts about the stuff he's doing with his family. So it's lovely to see you out there with, and it's a pretty young family. You've got 4 kids? Three kids. And you're outside quite a bit. Has TNC changed that part of your life? Has it pushed you guys to be more of an outside family and more in nature, or is it?
Yeah.
Have you been always like that?
No, indeed. I think it changed me. I think it changed you also. I know that. Louisa, I was talking to Louisa. It does change me. I think, the best thing that happens to me, when the first 3 months in the job, I think I told you this, my son, he said, "Dad, you look different now." I said, "Why?" "I'm the same, No, it's different. You look much more happier now, I think being on nature, it keeps you excited, keeps you motivating, That's the change. Less pressure. I was measured on daily basis, Now, it's a long-term plan, long-term programs, and we need to have the excitement really on a long-term. It's not something you can sprint and get an impact immediately.
Yeah. Well, I'm impressed with the places you guys have gotten. What are your favorite spots? What's the favorite family trip that you've taken?
Yeah, of course, looking at the wildlife, the orangutans is really nice. Really exciting. Just looking at them in nature. Climbing trees and holding the little ones with them, and what gets us excited as well, we are working, trying to conserve, the last great places, one of the great places on earth, How can you not be excited that you're trying to do that?
Yeah.
And this is what keeps us motivated and excited, and it's a really big deal. It's not just for us now, but it's for our future generations to come.
Well, I'm impressed with the what I think of as patriotism, which is sort of a pride of the place that you're from, and excitement about being a part of that solution for the future of Indonesia and other places in the world. And I really noticed that in you and your staff, and so it's inspiring to be around you all. I'm all done with questions. If there are no more from the floor, we can wrap up, and we appreciate everyone's time. And I know Rizal is always open for questions coming in over the transom or through the email or in whatever form you feel. So do please feel free to get those to him. I know he's got a new annual report, which is very beautiful, very well done. Great facts, figures, and measurability, and so hopefully you all can get one of these. And that's it for us for another edition of the Breakfast Briefs. Thanks so much.